Good evening, everybody. My name is Neil Redfern. I'm the Executive Director of the Council of British Archaeology, and I'm delighted to welcome you to one of two This is Archaeology lectures we will be doing over the next fortnight during the CBA's Festival of Archaeology. Tonight, I have the wonderful Nick Henderson here to talk to you about the baths that conceal so many secrets of joy and the Uncovering Roman Carlisle project. I first met Nick about 3 years ago, and he introduced me to the team at Uncovering Roman Carlisle. And I have to say, we've not stopped talking since. It's an absolutely fantastic project. Not only that, it's also now an award-winning project. I'm delighted that Nick is here to actually help us. So Nick is the Economic Development Officer at Cumberland Council, and he's worked on Hadrian's Wall for quite some time, principally for English heritage. He's now part of the Hadrian's Wall partnership with Carlisle and Cumberland councils. And obviously Nick's main role is to secure funding and supporting heritage projects along the wall. And I think when you start to hear about the project in Carlisle, you really understand how valuable Nick is to the group that's actually been set up there. So Nick, I'll introduce in a moment. First of all, can I just remind everybody to abide by the CBA's Code of Conduct, please? Again, we will be accepting questions through the Q&A function. So if you go to the Q&A and have a question, we will read those out and present those to Nick at the end. Again, if you've got any other conversations you want, please feel free to use the chat. The talk will last about 45 minutes, and then there'll be plenty of time for questions. So please do ask your questions as we actually go along. And without further ado, what I would like to do is introduce you to our speaker, Nick Henderson, who is going to explore Roman Carlisle with us. Nick, over to you.
No, thank you. It's an absolute pleasure. So thank you for having us, and thank you for involving us in the Festival of Archaeology as well. So we've been really fortunate to build up connections with the CBA over since first meeting Neil just sort of a couple of years ago. So as I've said before, my name's Nick Henderson. I work as Economic Regeneration Officer for Cumberland Council, but with a particular bend for heritage and tourism and wellbeing and skills projects. And that's how we sort of are using regeneration in Cumberland Council and heritage. We're kind of marrying the two together. And this has been one of the best examples of a project using heritage, using tourism, and essentially archaeology as a vehicle to develop skills, well-being, and also just to discover these so many secret joys that the Bathhouse has concealed over the years. So the quote itself, it comes from Ovid, from his Amores, which is his book on the art of love, and he discusses objects, including a gemstone that is lost from a signet ring, potentially, into the waters of a bathhouse, and that's why the quote seemed quite so appropriate. So what I'll do is I'll run through what the project is, how it started, how did we get here, what's some of the really standout finds that we've discovered, what has gone really well for the project, and areas that we're looking to develop in future. So this is the image I was talking around before. It's one of the images. It's the first day on the 2024 season. So we've got there's two of the project team have been photoshopped into it. So you can see which ones whether you can pick them out. But this was sort of to give you an idea of the scale of how many people we were able to accommodate on the site. It's been between 25 to around 40 people daily have been able to be accommodated on the site. And Uncovering Roman Carlisle, it's currently a coalition of the willing, as it were, between Carlisle Cricket Club, Cumberland Council, Wardle Armstrong, who are the archaeological unit of an engineering firm based in Carlisle, and Tullie. So Tullie is an art gallery and museum, sort of Carlisle's premier art gallery and museum. So we've got the site itself, just as the foreshadowing, the Cumberland flag held in the centre. The initial picture, it was upside down, which somewhat foreshadowed the weather on site this year, which I think has been the most atrocious that we've had since we've sort of started. But the Uncovering Roman Carlisle project. So we'll be talking about what is the Uncovering Roman Carlisle project, how did it start, what's so special about it, what do we want to achieve, what have we achieved, and where next. So where are we? So for those who are unfamiliar where we are in Carlisle. So this is a sort of map to give you a bit of context of what was going on in the Roman period around it. You can see Hadrian's Wall running across in the centre, and then we are the western outpost. We were the frontier city on Hadrian's Wall, sort of one of the large conurbations of a local tribe called the Carvetii. And if you go to Carlisle, there is a coffee shop named Carvetii Coffee in honour of such a tribe. But it was one of the most significant settlements, and there was 2 Roman forts within Carlisle. There was the Alla Petriana, which is sort of on Stanwix Bank. It currently sits beneath a school and St Michael's Church. And the second fort, where the settlement was, which is Lugualium, was beneath Tullie, the museum, and one of the project partners, and also a Carlisle Castle. So it's a very significant, very militarized area, as well as a tribal capital. So there's quite a lot going on there. So how did we get here? How did it start? So this is Carlisle Cricket Club. You've got a painting on the right-hand side from 1915, which is, I believe, in Tullie. And this shows you the cricket pavilion, as was. They've been playing cricket on the site since the 1870s, 1874, I believe. And behind you have Carlisle Cathedral and Carlisle Castle. On the left-hand side, just to give you an idea of the proximity of the river to where the clubhouse is, you can see where the cricket pitch is. And then in the bottom part, just above the road, you can see where the tennis courts are, or where they were. And that's where our site is. That's where the Roman bathhouse is. So there was a number of reasons why the project began, but primarily it was this. So there was repeatedly quite terrible flooding of Carlisle Cricket Club, sort of starting 2008, 2015, 2019 to 2020. So there was a number of quite catastrophic flooding events at the cricket club, which led them to want to explore other sites on the cricket ground in order to sort of build their new clubhouse. So as part of that, Mike Rayson said to Frank Gico is the archaeological director at Wardle Armstrong. Mike Rayson, who's the Carlisle Cricket Club chair, said when they were excavating the tennis courts, find nothing or find something flipping amazing. I've edited that slightly to make it, but something amazing they did find. So in the image we've got here, you can see that's an image of Frank holding a stone dedicated to the Empress, quite likely the Empress Julia Domna. So Julia Domna was married to the Emperor Septimius Severus. So they were ruled from sort of 193 AD through to the 210s. And then you can also see in the image here, these stacks, these Apelli tile stacks being measured by one of the volunteers, Sylvie. And you can see there, they look like stacks of books. This is the sign of a Roman bathhouse. So it's very much definitively a Roman bathhouse. And then we have this inscription to the Empress Julia Domna. And when you combine it with the other evidence, it makes a very compelling case that they were possibly the imperial family in Carlisle, in Lugualium at that time. So that was the initial discovery in 2017, and then the site was fallow. We started on a bid in 2019, so that was when I first started working for Hadrian's Wall Partnership. We started writing the bid, and 2020, when we submitted it, we got around through the first round, and then COVID happened, so we had to suspend it essentially for a year. But when we were able to return, we've been able to come back every year since 2021 to the site, which has been fantastic, and it's much more than we ever imagined we'd be able to do. So Uncovering Roman Carlisle, it's an ongoing program of community archaeological investigations, engagement, and exhibitions centered around the heritage of Carlisle, the Roman heritage of Carlisle, and in particular the bathhouse. And as one of the main project aims, Uncovering Roman Carlisle, we seek to enhance anybody who takes part, participants' well-being, create a sense of community, and provide opportunities to participate in heritage, but in particular to build skills and experience in a heritage setting and using heritage as a vehicle. So what do we hope to achieve from the dig? We wanted to increase the number of Carlisle's residents directly engaged with Carlisle's heritage. Carlisle has, despite its fantastic Roman pedigree, there's very little available Roman heritage-wise to physically see, to interact with, to touch in Carlisle. And the site provides a tangible way to connect with the heritage of Carlisle, to see it being uncovered. If you want to see Roman walls in Carlisle, you have to go to the castle walls and the cathedral walls, which have been recycled out of Roman stone, much of it from our bathhouse. There's vast robber pits. We were essentially a quarry for a long period of time. We wanted to deliver community and economic benefit. This was through imparting skills. This was through bringing visitors to the area. For every day visited to Carlisle, £38 on average goes into the economy. For every overnight visitor to Carlisle, £218 goes into the economy. So if you imagine we have 6,000 visitors to the dig in one session, and there's a breakdown, 84% are a day visitor, and the remaining sort of 16% stay overnight. This all contributes and builds up Carlisle's prominence. Also, we've created the wellbeing of Carlisle's residents. As we'll see, the impact of the dig on Carlisle's residents has been, and those participating in it, in terms of just connecting with people, creating friendships, and also just physical well-being has improved vastly from it. We also wanted to exhibit what we found and create, essentially using volunteer voices. Much of this was done through the work with Tullie, essentially utilizing object biographies. So it's not just, say, a hairpin that was discovered, it's what it meant to the person who discovered it. As well as that, we want to create activities, attractions, whether this was exhibitions, whether this was school visits. And we've had about 800 pupils this year, which has been quite fun accommodating. And as well, assisting in the economic development of the city. The dig has become a focal point. It's become something that people can identify Carlisle readily with. We've had diggers, so our volunteer cohorts is known as the diggers. We've had diggers, there's, for example, one of the diggers, Anastasia, when she was getting the train back home, there was a gentleman on the train that said she was putting Carlisle on the map and bought her a cup of coffee. So little stories like that kind of help build up this idea that the dig is helping the prominence of Carlisle, and it's been reported on in over 40 countries and featuring in a number of national documentaries, including a Japanese documentary on the, including site finds. We wanted to strengthen the project partnership between different workers, in particular between the council, Tullie, the cricket club, and Wardle Armstrong. But as well, we've branched out into working with the DWP and other areas, and also we want to create a legacy of the project, and that is imparted through the skills and also through interventions on the site. So this is what we hoped to achieve as part of the dig. It was funded through a number of different funders since 2021. The 2021-2022 excavation was made possible through the National Lottery Heritage Fund. And since then, we've been able to return to the site thanks to UK government levelling up funding, which is specifically for placemaking and to improve cultural assets. But as well as that, we've also had the CBA. We've won an award in 2021, and the money from that award from the Marsh Charitable Trust went towards a mini excavation. We've also received fundings from the Berry Family Trust, which we're very thankful for their contributions, allowing us to create an exhibition, and also through public donations and shameless plug of the merchandise. You can see the book in the top corner. It's in stock if you want to find out more about the Roman Intaglios. And this is how we were collecting donations this year. This is one of the most important diggers. This is Emmett. One of the volunteers on the site created Emmetus, our Roman soldier who does have a donation spot in the head, but I think he's one of the most popular volunteers on the site, especially with the school groups. So it was created by volunteers. It's one of the lots of, I wish I had time to get across how many of the volunteers have added something big and small to this dig. And I genuinely, if you're listening to the call, thank you. If you volunteered on the project or if you're hoping to volunteer, thank you for making it what it is. So the excavation headlines so far. So we've had 6 excavations since 2021 of varying size. Some have been up to 40 days, which is the most recent one. Around that, others have been a weekend. We're going to be visiting the site again at the end of this month, beginning of August, for a very brief trial trench, and also to allow some filming for a documentary. There's been 4 exhibitions. The touring exhibition traveled across 10 venues in the area. We've had over 3,500 volunteer places. There's been 16,000 site visitors. There's been over 100 talks to over 3,000 people, including talks such as this, but also to schools, community hubs, to the sort of Cumberland Westmoreland antiquarian societies, to archaeological societies, but also just to the Women's Institute, for example. So we've had, there's been over 14,000 visiting 2 temporary exhibitions in Tullie House. We've also had about 6,000 visiting the touring exhibition that was run, and then over 3,000 for the schools and the learning participation program. So we've been, Chloe, who's holding the dolphin head that you can see there in the blue. Chloe's been visiting a number of schools to do with the project and taking objects into the schools. And we've also had a large number of students and pupils on the site from primary right through to university of the third age. And there's been international participation from over 40 different countries, either volunteering on the site, engaging with the site, or reporting on some of the finds from the site. So that's just a slight idea of some of the engagement that we've had from internationally to do with the project. Frank, who's the archaeological director, is quite big in Japan now. And also we've been reported on in the Azerbaijani national press, in the newspaper, sort of the Australian, Indian, Pakistan, North American. The discovery of one of the really significant objects was made by an American lady who I'm hoping is possibly on the call, Carolyn, which led to quite a lot of coverage across the sort of North America. But I'll talk now a little bit on what's the archaeology of the site before getting on to the volunteering and the impact side, just to give you an impression of what we've had. It is a huge building. It's 60, I believe it's 60 meters by 50 meters is the current estimate. I say it's a bathhouse. It's more accurately a thermae, a sort of a collection of different rooms, buildings. So it's essentially a building with a bathhouse as opposed to just a building, a bathhouse itself. But it's 50 meters by 60 meters, and there's some really significant finds have come out of it. There's an inscription dedicated to Severus' wife, which we've seen, to Julia Domna. We've also found two monumental carved Roman heads, utterly unique, that might be connected to either a funerary context. We found 70 carved intaglios, 70 of these gemstones that have been discovered from volunteers as young as 8 up to 80, and also the only example of Tyrian purple, I believe, in Northern Europe. So the excavation itself, there is evidence, there's literary evidence of Severus having been in Carlisle, although there is some slightly disputed in some respects. But this is the site to give you an idea. So we have you can see in the blue there, where the Carlisle Cricket Club Bathhouse is, the location, building height course, so you can get an idea of where the other forts. You've got Stanwix Fort up the hill here, the line of Hadrian's Wall running through and over the river, and then you've got Carlisle Fort down here. If you get the chance to see one of Frank Gico's talks on the site, please do ask him about the Holy Grail, as Frank's initial suspicions that there was a very significant site, bathhouse, in the vicinity of where it was discovered, go back to some rather interesting exploration that was done a few years ago. So this is the bathhouse sort of here, and you can see where it is in proximity to the other forts in Carlisle, which is quite a significant number of troops. The Emperor Severus had between 30 and 40,000 troops when he was invading Scotland in the 210s. So this is the site here. You can see the National Cycle route running down where the road is up Stanwix Bank. These are shipping containers. You can see on the left-hand side, down in the bottom left-hand corner, and there's the site Finds Hut, which is the Jimmy Little, named after a Carlisle Cricket Club player. And then you can see here marked out in red sections of the wall, and in blue parts of the drain where we've discovered a number of these gemstones, these intaglios. And then to the south, running through where the shipping containers are, you can see where the road is running. So that just gives you an idea of the size of the site. You can see where the cars are, you can see where the shipping containers are. It just gives you an idea of the size of the site and the fact it goes into the bank and beyond where we've been able to excavate underneath where the road is. So Carlisle Cricket Club is wanting to put their new pavilion initially here, but they're now going to move it a little bit further south on the site, and they're allowing us to put more holes in what used to be the tennis court, for which we are eternally grateful to the cricket club, but also to put in the longer term interpretation on the site so that we can mark it out more permanently. So this is an image of the Emperor Septimius Severus. We're talking about him quite a lot, but it's this monumental building. So you've got the Emperor Septimius Severus, his wife Julia Domna, and the sort of tondo depicted on the right-hand side there, and then one of their sons, Caracalla, with his face not scribbled out, and his brother Gaeta. They, after the Emperor Severus's death, Caracalla and Gaeta had a bit of a power struggle, and you can probably guess who won from the which face has been scribbled out. But we also have a coin there dedicated to Julia Domna and a very unique hairstyle. You can see it depicted on this the tondo, which is that image of the Severan family, the Severan dynasty, and then you can sort of see how it's reflected on the coinage, and this coin's been discovered on the site. And we have a source from the Historia Augusta, which is a late Roman source, the life of Septimius Severus, and it mentions him on his way to Lugovalium, which is Carlisle. So volunteers have been a huge part of this, and it could not have happened without them. And so I've sprinkled a couple of quotes here. So this is one of my favorite quotes from a discovery. A reminder of my first ever Roman find, a piece of blue glass. It made time stop to realize that I was the first person to touch it since the Roman dropped it. So on the right here, we have some of the images by Gico of what's been found down the drains, including some of that blue glass, some of the intaglios, and some of the beads that would have been part of these fantastic sort of hairstyles, dresses, and bits of Roman jewelry that's ended up down the drain. Other finds that have been really significant, we found that's an imperial tile stamp on the left-hand side. We found a lot of them with animal paw prints in. That one, I believe, has got a deer's paw print in. You can see there's a, Lawrence is one of the volunteers holding that one. Don't know whether he thanked me for pointing that out because he's quite shy. But he's been one of the great volunteers, really been engaged with the project. These imperial tile stamps make up the hypercore system of the Bathhouse. And the imperial tile stamps are essentially tiles fit for an emperor. That IMP stands for Imperator. They're commissioned by the emperor. Beside it, we have these beakers, initially thinking that might have been part of, say, a tavern, but actually the context they were found in is by what we believe to be a mausoleum. So there's we found essentially we believe burial ground on the site, including a cremation burial that we sort of were able to do a block transfer, able to remove. So here's one of the really impressive finds on the site. We've got this little bronze lion. It's we were quite curious about what it was. It's quite bizarre. And then on the left-hand side, this is part of you can see some bronze lions on what remains. This is part of a standard from a school of priests. This is sort of potentially indicating quite a prestigious school of priests that was on the site. And this bronze lion that's been discovered from it. We found some of the rings from that standard as well. This is an example, I believe, from a Belgian site. Some of the other finds from the site, we've got a part of an inscribed tombstone on the left-hand side for a part of the Alla Petriana, and we have a lead seal. This is a lead seal. We found 5 now, I believe, on site. 6, sorry, I believe, on site. And this lead seal was on display in the Legion exhibition in the British Museum. So finds from the site have been travelling to quite far and wide. We have the dolphin skull, dolphin carving, which I absolutely love, especially the slightly odd expression on its face, very stylized. And then we've had these monumental heads. They're about 60 centimeters, 70 centimeters in height, utterly unique. Many of them have been found smaller in a kind of funerary context, and these depict Roman theatre masks, and there would be a potropaic that would be used as a kind of sign of protection. If you imagine you're entering into a bathhouse, you'd be entering into an area that you'd be potentially nude in. They could protect you against the evil eye. It's one theory. But then on the other hand, because of all of the funerary contexts that we found, perhaps they're more associated with what was going on to the south of the site, where there's a number of burials potentially. And this here is the Tyrian purple. So this was discovered on the site in 2023, and more sections of it have been discovered in this year, 2024, a couple sort of small pieces. It went to test a number of locations, and it was down at Newcastle University, was ran a number of tests on it. This is part of the success of the project, has been the way that people have engaged with it and given their time as in-kind. Over £250,000 worth of in-kind support was given in the 2021 to 2022 phase, and it's just been ongoing, which has been absolutely fantastic. So Newcastle University has tested it and confirmed it is Tyrian purple. This is a type of imperial pigment, purple pigment, that was made out of, I believe it was 10,000. Essentially, they would use, I was telling a lot of the school groups, they would essentially use sea snail snot, mucus glands from a particular type of predatory sea snail that you find in the Eastern Mediterranean. And they were using it, and it was about 10,000 for, I think it was a gram. It was for 3 times the price of gold. And then we've also found over 600 coins. In the top left-hand, the middle coin, there's a row of 3 in the middle coin. That's an image of Romulus and Remus and the she-wolf. And this is part of a millennial coin, it's 1,000-year anniversary of the foundation of Rome. And we've found 600 coins right through, from the oldest coin that has been found in Carlisle, dates to 82 BC, has been found on the site. And this is a Roman Republican coin. This is before the Roman Empire was even founded. And that coin had been in circulation for 200 years before being deposited where our bathhouse is. As well, the Intaglios, the fantastic collection of Intaglios, these gemstones that would be part of a signet ring. And this is a quote from Ovid, a Roman poet. "Whenever she writes some secret lines of love, lest the dry gum and wax should sticking prove." This is a ring, an intaglio, an inscribed ring that's been given to Ovid's lover, and she goes into the bathhouse, and he's basically hoping and praying that the gum that holds it together doesn't melt and it drop off into the drains, the bathhouse. Martin Hennig, Dr. Reverend Martin Hennig, leading expert on intaglios in Britain, among many other things, has concluded that the Northern School of Engravers is truly the Carlisle School because of the quality and the number of these intaglios that we have discovered on the site. Some of my favourite ones are here. For example, there's a little mouse right in the centre. There's a little mouse feeding on a bit of a corn, I believe. There's a parrot just above it. And then we've also got, for example, an image of, there's a bee down here as well. And there's a number some are very masculine, to do with sort of images of Mars, Jupiter. Others are more to do with fertility of Venus, for example. And they're in carnelian, they're in amethyst, glass paste, a number of different materials. So the exhibitions that we've run as part of the site, so with part of the partnership that we've had, we've been able to exhibit a number of these finds. In 2021 and 2022, there was the Uncovering Roman Carlisle exhibition in Tullie House to show some of the objects. This involved community co-production. So basically, volunteers were invited to take part in it. The images that you can see on the top left-hand side, these are the object mounts that were made by Lancaster Royal Grammar School. And the image on the top right-hand side is 3D scanning of the objects. So 37 volunteers worked with Tullie's curatorial team, essentially to create part of the exhibition. And we've been using sections of this exhibition again. And in 2023, we returned, Tullie hosted the Digging Deeper exhibition. And we're planning to do more 3D scanning of the objects, up to 100 objects in the next phase, using the volunteers, so working with our volunteers. So the touring exhibition was, again, this is part of the project. So it traveled around sort of 10 venues. We've subsequently taken it to 3 more after. So it's got a bit of an afterlife, this exhibition, but it traveled around the county, and this was taking heritage and bringing it into places that it wouldn't normally be expected. For example, the Lanes, which is a shopping centre in the middle of Carlisle. And is currently, actually, the Lanes is on top of sections of essentially parts of Roman shopping centres and burials and other sections in Carlisle. But it travelled around the sort of Carlisle district. So this is one of the things in the project, is bringing heritage into areas that you wouldn't necessarily expect to find it, expect to see it, and especially along the lines of Hadrian's Wall, and making it visible in Carlisle, is where there isn't a great deal of Roman heritage to see. So some of the quotes that have come out from the exhibition, this one that I've really loved, the broad term, the human side. Something that's come out from speaking to the volunteers time and time again is the fact that one of my favorite quotes is, "They weren't Romans, they were us," which is essentially stating how they were connected through time. Being able to put your fingerprint on top of a Roman's fingerprint seems to be a really quite brilliant way to connect. And also seeing animal paw prints on a number of the tiles, everyone can relate to, you know, having a dog or a cat or somebody who has one, knowing somebody who has one. It's one of the ways that the project has helped connect with people, and which I believe is one of the most successful ways to kind of make people feel invested in heritage. And if there's any volunteers that call, any of the diggers on the call, I hope you sort of feel yourself seen and represented in these kind of quotes and that sort of feeling that's come out of it. And you can see in the bottom corner there, it's Di there, with sort of one of the coins that she found in the exhibition, and with her voice sort of represented through that. So the visitors to Uncovering Roman Carlisle, to the excavation, there's been over 16,000 visitors to the site from 2021 to 2024 at those 6 excavations. On average, it's about 5,000 to 6,000 visitors to one of the big excavations that we've run. There's been 1,884 school pupils have been at hands-on activities on the site. It's been one of the great ways to engage with people. This year, there was around 800 school pupils at the site, engaging at the site, taking part in activities around it. So we've had sort of over 100 additional persons from special interest groups. These have been groups with people who've been long-term unemployed, those with additional needs, for example, MenCap, And even we've had a number of people from probation service engaging with the excavations and taking part in the excavations as well. So there's been, I'd say 600 plus volunteer site tours. I believe actually the number's slightly higher, but that's what we've got sort of marked down. So the tours on site are led by and delivered by volunteers. And this is one of the ways that sort of being able to connect with and represent your own heritage and talk about it. There's a great deal of local pride in these, just being able to sort of highlight it. So, and then in addition, we've had sort of, for example, just to pick out, over 4,000 individuals have visited the digitized Uncovering Roman artifacts online. So there's a Sketchfab, there's a number of scans of the site on Sketchfab free to access, and we're looking to create a digital virtual museum in the next phase of the project before January 2025. So just a couple of images from the site. We've got, for example, top right-hand corner was the former mayor popping down, getting her bling out, as she said, to bring it down onto the site. So these are some of the survey headlines that has impacted. So I'll as I realise we're sort of going over a little bit, I won't spend too long, but just to highlight, the first year of the project that we had, 34% of the volunteers, so over a third of the volunteers, came from deprived postcodes. Postcodes and deprived wards in the city of Carlisle. So that's, in a project like this, one of the really big strengths has been the fact it's in an urban setting. It's free to engage with, to volunteer with. You can come for a day, you can come for an afternoon, and it's also easy to access on either public transport or just to walk down to the site. Out of the initial cohort that we had 2021, 8% identified as having a disability. And we offer 12 different types of activity that you can broadly broken down. There's 12 different types. So regardless of whether you have mobility issues or otherwise, there are different ways to engage with it and engage with the activities. And as you can see, 57%, so nearly 60% of volunteers in the initial run had never engaged in a heritage or archaeology project before, with just shy of 70%, 69% reporting they gained skills for future employment, study, or volunteering. We had a number of volunteers go on, I believe there's 8 now have gone on to work in, at least in some way, shape or form in archaeology, but others have gone on using transferable skills gained and to work in sort of, everything from retail jobs to archaeology jobs to education. We've had 10% of the 2021 volunteers received an archaeological skills passport, a badger passport. So the survey headlines from last year, there's 21% of volunteers responded. You normally aim for about 10%, which is a great response. So 21% response rate in the initial sort of run, and of those, 80% felt more pride in Carlisle and in their area, which is one of the big things that we wanted to get out of this project, is people feeling pride in Carlisle, understanding more about Carlisle. 98% of the volunteers responded that they did. And one of the best results from last year was over 90% reported improved well-being. So feeling less isolated, feeling physically more fit and able, mentally more fit and able, and creating, I believe it was about 60% of volunteers. So 6 in 10 volunteers made friendships and connections and stayed in touch after the dig. Which has been great, and it genuinely feels like, I know it's a cliche, but genuinely does feel like a family. The diggers and the excavation around it, and it's wonderful seeing so many new faces as well as so many returning. So these are the most recent survey headlines. I don't know whether Joe will thank me for that picture. So the fragment of Samian ware that Mark's holding in the centre of it had a stamp on it, and our Samian expert Stephen, who's has been on site. So he's been, provided a great deal of gain of in-kind support to the site in terms of Samian expertise. He wasn't in that section of the site, hence why Mark is holding that bit of Samian ware, as Steve would love to have found it. But we've had nearly 25%, so nearly a quarter of volunteers responded to the most recent survey headline. The current estimate, although we're still collecting data from the most recent excavation, current estimate's around 400 volunteers. There's 373 volunteers last year. There's around 400. Although actually I believe the number's higher, but that's 400 that we've got logged as taking part. So 99% enjoyed themselves and had fun. 95% reported improved well-being. Around 8% said that they would recommend it to a friend or to come back. And then just shy of 70% felt fitter and healthier. 69% felt fitter and healthier. These are all of the results that we want to kind of tease out, and especially that the second one to the bottom, 56% reporting they gained skills for future employment, study, or volunteering. The impact of this for a project like it, to have that high an amount, having received skills that they can then take on, is something really quite unique. And it's so previous experience in an archaeological project, just to compare, the first year that we ran it, 57% were first-time volunteers, 40% had volunteered in a similar project before. The last dig that we did, that we just concluded early this month, they've of them, 34% had volunteered sort of on an archaeology project before. But of those that had done it before, they had volunteered on past phases. So a lot of those returning, the first experience that they had was working with us and being part of our project. So it's one of my favorite quotes I've just got here. Every individual I passed had stopped to welcome me and enthused at what they'd found. I remember leaving the site that day thinking I've become part of an unfolding story. And this is something that is very much part of the Uncovering Roman Carlisle project. It's that uncovering section. So these are a number of reasons why people volunteered. Most prominently was interest and passion. Repeatedly we found bucket list stuff came up quite a lot because it's amazing, is one of the others, and because it's taking part in discovery, taking part in history and heritage, and having never done anything like it before, and also being close to home. So interestingly, health and well-being was not high on the reasons of why people volunteered, but it was very high on the reasons of the impact of the project, even if it wasn't a motivation to take part. So here, one of the images from Pete Salvin. Pete Salvin's one of the volunteers on site. He uses photography repeatedly. This is one of the possibly part of a Roman spear tip, cavalry spear tip that was discovered on the site. So as part of the discoveries that have come out of it, it's one of the most enjoyable parts of the site. You can see their discovery, 43%. It was 43% discovery was being the most enjoyable thing about it. And then soon behind that was the camaraderie and feeling part of something bigger than yourself, being part of something. So there's always learning that can come out of it. I'll skip through some of these bits because I realize that we obviously don't have too much time. So one thing that would change would be my favorite one.
You're fine with the time, Nick. Keep going.
Is that all right? Right.
Yeah,
no
good,
worries. One of the biggest sections that people would like to change is the weather. So this is part of the drain reflooding, and also demonstrating that the Roman drains, despite 1,800 years, work quite well. One of the objects that came out of it, a Roman hairpin, I remember floating quite happily down the drain after it had been disturbed. But the weather is one thing that would change. Also the wheelbarrowing, which is fair enough, as it's with the amount of tons of earth that have come out of it. Some of the other bits that we've learned from it as well, from this section from this year, the booking system that we were using can do some improvements. It was potentially quite difficult to access for some, and finding alternate ways for people to book. Although we did have a number of walk-ups onto the site who were able to take part. The booking system's been one thing that we found can really learn from. The section, the inductions, we had numbers of starting. We were running project briefs every morning, but essentially the induction process and the training leading up to being on the site this year, we were able to run a number of training sessions that have gone down really well. And leading into the next dig, we're going to review the booking system to make it more intuitive, and also the inductions, the number of training sessions that will be running in the run up to the site. We're going to increase the number of, and also on the site itself, having professionals and supervisors and experienced volunteers, essentially a kind of buddy system available on the site to look after people and to make sure that they're feeling supported. About 60% of those who took part in the most recent phase felt that they were very well supported. And the remaining 40%, it's a combination of feeling moderately supported or not particularly. So we want to improve that, and it's something that we can really build on, and make sure that people feel that they know what they're doing and how to do it. And this will be reflected in the number of site briefings that will be running as well. So we'll be taking a bit more. Because so much changes on the site, and because so much is being discovered on the site, we want to essentially make sure that people are feeling like they're aware of what's going on, and that'll be reflected. That's come out in some of the feedback we've had from the most recent section. And these were some of the really strong heritage outcomes that have come from it. It's in particular that knowing more about Carlisle's Roman heritage, 100% of those who took part in 2021 knew more about Carlisle's Roman heritage. And it's about 96% of those who took part in 2024 know more about Carlisle's Roman heritage, which is a fantastic result that's come out of it. And as we've already seen about increasing that level of archaeological skills, I quite like the quote here from one of the volunteers recently: how lucky we are to have a Roman site right on our doorstep, how amazing it is to reveal the layers of history and cleaning the finds and finding how much detail was on the coins. The coins have been a really interesting piece that's come out. You can chart essentially the course of the Roman Empire through the coins that we've and before and after. On the coins that we found on the site, we found Anglo-Saxon sort of kind of Dark Age, sort of migration period Stiker on the site, as well as a sort of Napoleon III coin from the Victorian era. We found sections, musket balls and cannonballs from the Jacobite siege of Carlisle and the Parliamentarian and sort of royalist civil war sieges of the city. So the site isn't just the Roman side, it's the heritage of Carlisle being represented in this one place. So one of the other finds I've loved, and my heart skipped a beat. So this here is a silver ring that was found on a section of the Rhodes trench when it was initially uncovered. It's one of my favourite quotes. Partly I've just highlighted, my heart skipped a beat, and followed by, I shouted OMG many times and could not say anything else. Finally, I nervously handed it, this is the sort of the object, to Kevin, who's one of the archaeological supervisors, who smiled broadly and said, that's very nice. And for Kevin, this is high praise. So it was little things like that and the level of excitement. To be honest, finding a coin or part of a pot or part of a jar, it does really capture that feeling. So these are some of the wellbeing outcomes just reflected. These are from the 2021 excavation. And then 95% of people feeling they're connected with someone. And there's a crossover between, we have a lot of former retired or current armed forces, but also sort of blue lights, police, NHS, fire service volunteers who've been attracted to the site. One of the quotes from one of the NHS volunteers, this was in light of post-COVID, working for the NHS, so I've just highlighted it here. Working for the NHS, this was really important for my well-being. I started to feel I didn't want to socialise, but the volunteering really supported me and moved me towards gaining confidence again. And this is something that's really come out of the site, is that gaining confidence, not just in archaeological skills, but also just in socializing and being around other people and feeling part of something. And it's become a really important part of people's, social calendar, for lack of a better term, in the events that we've run. So this here is a paw print. And we've got the washers below. So the washers are sort of in the Jimmy Little, sort of processing a lot of CBM, a lot of ceramic building material from the site. But that paw print is one of the really popular finds that's come out of it. In particular, the school groups really love it. And we've commissioned and received, we have a 3D print of the paw print and a 3D print of a number of similar objects that can tour. I believe, if going by the insurance, the 3D prints are oddly financially more valuable than the actual objects, the actual artifacts. But the objects, these 3D prints of the objects, are one of the ways that we're wanting to expand the way that people can interact with the site. And we've incorporated them into temporary exhibitions, the schools program, and are hoping to scan 100 objects in the upcoming phase of the project and 3D print a selection of 12 different objects, including the most sensitive finds from the site. And these intaglios, we're able to use the 3D scanning to blow up the intaglio size to make them around the size of an A5 or A4 bit of paper for relatively little. And this helps us kind of connect with people, and they can see the craftsmanship on these objects. So many of the objects are reflected, seen as a snapshot in time. And seeing the paw print embedded in the tile, this quote here talks about being transported back, and this comes up over and over again. And you can imagine the tiles being left out to dry, and then deer, wild boar, dogs, cats obviously liking to walk over everything, and the Roman cats being just the same. So these are some of the skills outcomes that have come out from the 2021 project. Wanting to volunteer on a similar project again in 2021 was around 93%. It was around sort of 80% on the most recent phase that we've done, but still a really good result, and still something quite high. 69% having skills that they would use in future, same percentage on the most recent phase. One thing that's really come out is we've had a number of young volunteers on site, including William Howard School has brought a number of their students to the site, sort of their sixth form students to the site, and they're running a GCSE in archaeology, and they will be engaged in the next phase on the site as well, coming this September. So we're expecting around 30 GCSE students to be engaged in the next phase of the site. We've had quite a lot of university students wanting to just build up their profile and also build up their archaeological skills and familiarization with the site. And this is reflected in some of the quotes from young volunteers. For example, gain archaeological excavation experiences among the most, the highest sort of response rate. And also just, it's very easy to feel kind of lost and unsure of what you want to do in life. And coming to dig has been one of the ways that people have found an element of direction, whether they've gone on to work in archaeology or to study in archaeology or not. It's helped provide people with direction. There's so many personal stories on the site. This one I've always loved. My son was on site, able to witness this, a memory for him to share in many years to come. It's become, for many volunteers, become a bit of a family affair, sort of bringing people down, bringing kids down to see what they've been doing and to feel that connection, which has been repeatedly one of the finds that has come out of it. And you've got one of the young volunteers there with out sort of on the 2021 project, trying out a bit of the metal detecting. We've had the sort of Young Archaeologists Club, YAC, have been down on site this year as well, where we were learning about, for example, the dyeing of Roman purple and also getting them to fill in find sheets and finding some really interesting stuff on the spoil heaps with them. So we've had quite a number of these sort of young archaeologist groups engaging on the site. And in terms of promotion, apologies for the picture there. That's an image of Alice Roberts and Frank Gico. I think it's one of Frank's favourite images. Frank Gico, the archaeological director, now has an IMDb page. Sort of building he won at the end of the project. We have a Golden Trowel Award, and Frank won the Golden Trowel Award for TV Personality of the Year. Which is just a trowel spray painted gold, as you probably guessed. But we've got where the promotional impact of the dig has put Carlisle on the map. It sounds like cliche, but it's been very much true. Over 40 countries across the EU, America, the Commonwealth, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, India, Pakistan, Nigeria, Kenya, and across in Asia, for example, Vietnam, Japan, China, Taiwan. It's been covered in all of these different places. All of these different countries have had articles in either National Geographic or the national papers. We've featured in National Geographic, sort of France, Germany, Italy, UK, USA, Spain, Poland as well. We've featured in the Smithsonian Magazine, British Archaeology, sort of national, local, international media, including a number of documentaries. We're planning to be in the Great Rail Journeys. And then here, just to reiterate, over 16,000 visitors to the excavations and 13,000 visitors to temporary and touring exhibitions. Sorry, that's around 13 to 14,000 visitors to temporary and touring exhibitions should be. So what has worked really well is that we've emerged as a unique urban community archaeology project. We're free to engage with, we're easy to engage with. You don't need any level of skill or background in archaeology to be part of it. And also what's worked really well is the different variety of skills: archaeological fieldwork survey, excavations, recording, find processing, data management, but then also the exhibition side and the back office side that comes with it, whether it's been photography, whether it's been people able to bring their metal detector down, they're a hobbyist, whether it's been people bringing their camera down for photography or for drone footage. One of the other parts that's worked well is being able to recruit people with either from high areas of high deprivation or people from having a disability. Mike Rayson, chairman of the cricket club, is telling me about the Jovial Sailor, which is sort of one of the pubs in Carlisle Mike would describe as less salubrious, and people engaging about it and saying like, "Oi, Mike, chairman of the cricket club, what's this about this Roman Empire on our doorstep, the Bathhouse on our doorstep?" So it's been a way to connect with people from whatever background, and that's kind of what you want. That's what we want, because it's Carlisle's Bathhouse, and it should be excavated by Carlisleans, for lack of a better term, to work that into the presentation. But the skills acquisition's been very successful. 10% of volunteers 2021 being given an archaeological skills passport. Around sort of 20 volunteers will be issued with an archaeological skills passport in the next phase. as part of a pilot project in working with the DWP and referrals for long-term unemployed and those seeking skills to get them back into work. And this is building into the next phase of the excavation. So these are parts that have worked very well, and the community aspect for it has worked very well. There has been a number of challenges, and Uncovering Rome and Carlisle has been very dependent on considerable personal and voluntary commitment from a small team of professionals. There's a number of different people who make it happen within Wardle Armstrong, Carlisle Cricket Club, Tullie, the Diggers as a volunteer body. A number of the archaeologists on site are themselves volunteers. The archaeological supervisors are volunteers. The photography that you've seen there from Peter Savin or Jane Openshaw or Intaglios, these have all been voluntary, and many, even those who are paid parts of the project team, are volunteers part of the time themselves. So myself and Frank giving a number of our time as volunteers, whether it's weekends, evenings, or even annual leave. Frank's given most of his annual leave towards it. It's one of the reasons why I don't think he's going on holiday this year. But the towards this end, we want to build in a future, and as part of this, we've commissioned a 5-year plan looking at sort of the next phases of the excavation and how we can continue the activity. And this part of the recommendations of this is setting up a charitable interest organisation. Chloe Brownlee Chapman, who's been a feature of the dig since we were initially looking at coming back in 2019. Chloe's been working extremely hard on essentially helping out on site, running things on site, but then also in the establishment of a charitable interest organisation, which is the next phase. And this CIO will look at developing funding and business plans, managing these relationships that we've built up between different project partners, having a bank account, which has been a big thing that we've struggled with, not having a defined bank account, and also ensuring that the project continues to build on and maintain the support that has been given to it, as so much of it has been given in kind, and we can't really take for granted. So to all the volunteers, their ongoing support. So this is an image from one of the last sort of days on site. So thank you to everybody who's been involved and engaged on the site, to the project partners, Cumberland, Carlisle Cricket Club, Tullie, Wardle Armstrong, to the hundreds of volunteers who've made it possible, to those who've been producing professional work, whether it's been Newcastle University, Diane at Newcastle University, whether it's been Lancaster, studying the bones, doing strontium analysis on the bones, Dr. Reverend Martin Hennig with the analysis of the Intaglios, Doctors Jan and Ollie Mathers for the stone sourcing and dispersal report, the photogrammetry team at Liverpool, and also just in terms of contracting and the plant on site, much of it which has been done as in kind from Avon Construction and Frankie, from RH Irving, from Story Contracting, and then for the photography as well, so Anna Gico, Stuart Walker, Peter Savin, and Jane Openshaw. So much of it has been provided. And finally, the next phase that we're planning will be late September 2024. So around 20th September, we're looking to be back on site. We haven't released the try booking, but that sort of booking of it as we're reassessing the booking system. And but that we'll make sure to provide enough notice for people for the next phase. It was rather short notice that it was confirmed that we were able to come back. But we'll be looking towards that. So please to receive updates, join the Diggers Archaeology in Carlisle Facebook group, or follow us on the Uncovering Rome and Carlisle website. Myself and Angiko developed the website, so if you see any spelling mistakes, don't tell us. But the website's been a sort of new feature which has been allowing us to chart some of the impacts from the project. And just to finish, two of my favourite pieces that have come out of it. These were some of the school groups submitted these, they sort of sent them as a thank you. And one of my favourite responses was, "Thank you, dig people. Keep going, guys," which I really appreciated. Yeah, so one of the big things that has come out of it has been that side of it. So thank you. And thank you for listening. And I hope that's been enlightening as part of the dig and the impacts that we found. Yeah, please, very happy to field some questions on the project. So thank you for your time.
Nick, brilliant. Thank you so much. I'm going to try and open your camera so that we can see you. But that was amazing. Not surprising, we have lots of questions. We're probably not going to have time to go through them all. So what I'm going to suggest, if Sorry, go on, Nick.
No, I was going to say, if there's not time, I'm sure you're probably going to suggest this, Neil, actually. We've got the Uncovering Roman Carlisle at Gmail account.
Yep.
Be very happy to field the questions through that, which
what we'll do if we don't get to answer
yeah.
them, we'll send you the questions, and then we can post them later for people. But so let's just kick off with a few of the questions. First of all, I thought it was brilliant. What I really like is in the chat is there are so many volunteers who have been there. They're all having their own conversation in there, and I think that sense of community is really fantastic, because obviously our theme of the festival this year is archaeology and community, and I think you've really hit the nail, and everyone up in Carlisle has done that. But first question is, what for you has been the most significant find, and what did you learn from it?
Oh, that's a great question. I'm quite indecisive when I kind of get quite indecisive when it comes to this one. I think the most significant find for me personally has probably been the Intaglios, and one of the Venus intaglio, which is the one with the amethyst depiction of Venus. Just because the way that it's reshaped our knowledge of the Northern School of engravers has become the Carlisle School of Engravers. So just another, it's emblematic to me of the significance of the objects that have been found on the site. It's a beautiful work of art in and of its own right. It's visually quite stunning, but then also the way that it's rewriting what we know about the Roman frontier and what we know about Roman Britain. And it's only like sort of, I think it's 12 millimeters in height, so it's absolutely minuscule. And also the fact the way it was discovered. So the fines washers on site. There's Faye, Verity, and so Verity's about 8 years old, and sort of Faye's Verity's mum is sort of like volunteering with her, and just the manner in which so many. I believe that one was found by Verity. I might be mistaken, but it's just the way that there's so many of these tiny objects have been discovered. I'm name dropping a number of volunteers. But there's so many, probably most of the chat. But like to all of you, thank you for coming, and thank you for putting up with me on site as well. Those of you who volunteered.
Just building on the Intaglio questions there. I mean, I'm just amazed just how many there are. Jan Scott said that at Aldborough they found an Intaglio that had a mouse being pulled by a cockerel on it. But she also asked the question, why did they use such rubbish glue? And didn't think to take their rings off before they went into the bathhouse?
It's quite a good question, actually. I think I've asking myself that question a couple of times before, but I think it wasn't as big enough of an issue that they necessarily felt like they had to sort of stop using these kind of like natural resins that they were kind of setting within the rings. Because I mean, if you consider how many that we found, 70 is a huge amount, and obviously we know it was a problem from Ovid's report on the mores. We know that it was something that we discovered them everywhere as well. But it's you kind of consider how many that weren't discovered, or how many that would have been in use continually, sort of from on. And the amount of, when I used to work on Hadrian's Wall at Chester's Roman Fort, and I remember one, thankfully I was able to find them, but I remember one woman lost her engagement ring and her wedding ring on the site. And it's just, I think it's part of the thing that I do with the school groups is when we get them in, I sort of normally ask them is like, do you drop stuff in class by any chance? And obviously the kids are all saying like, yeah, and the teachers are nodding. I think it just seems to be a human thing to drop these things and deposit these things and lose these things. The other option is, I suppose, there's some intaglios I believe have kind of like a mechanical, for lack of a better term, like nibs on them to stop the rings dropping out, and we still find the rings. So that's I suppose there's a number of other solutions that were found, but probably the resin was among the most. Sorry to go on. There's an account I believe in Seneca of a Roman bathhouse. He moves in next door to a Roman bathhouse, and he's got some really like colourful stories in his letter about hearing how fat someone is by the sound of the slaves' hands massaging them, screams of men having their nose hair pulled out and plucked and their legs waxed, and grunts of men lifting weights and sausage sellers selling their wares. But I think it's in Seneca. There's an anecdote about a senator and an equestrian. So you have a knights in Roman society, and senators in Roman society came from different very all aristocracy, all top echelon, but different social strata. And there was a knight who was a lower social strata, an equites, punching a senator because they didn't recognize each other as what rank they were because they were needed in the bathhouse. So I think you kept your ring on. There's motivation to keep your ring on and other jewelry on as a means of showing your sort of social strata and your status as well, which is why they probably had them on despite losing so much. If that answered your question.
No, that's fine. I've got a whole host of questions around volunteering and visiting the site and taking part. So I think we'll try and put those into your Q&A, because I think that all the information's on your website and what you can do.
Yes.
But one question someone asked is there a selection process for volunteers?
No, we don't have a selection process for volunteers. We want to keep it as open as possible. So we've got I see Chloe's in the chat, so Chloe can keep me right if I get anything wrong as well. So for the selection process, we have a couple of spots that we hold back, and we try and target particular groups that wouldn't necessarily engage in heritage or don't engage with heritage as much as others. Generally, predominantly find those that are volunteering in heritage. It's exactly what you might expect, people who have the time to. One of the really, those who are necessarily retired, for example. One of the really big successes of the project, we've had quite a lot of, I think about over a third of those engaging in the project are in work. So they're able to kind of work it around what they're doing in their jobs, which has been fantastic. And that's sort of for the selection process. So no, we want as many people to take part. For being in the trench it's as it were, it's over 16s. But for other ways that we can incorporate people with parents and such, and we have done for this section of the dig. Although that is an area that we. Oh, sorry, Neil. That's an area that we want to improve our engagement on with targeting more hard to reach groups.
And just one final question on volunteering: when will your volunteering platform be open if people want to volunteer with you?
We're wanting to as soon as possible. So within the sort of next 2 weeks, we're looking at. I think Frank's probably in the chat, pulling parts of his hair out. This next couple of weeks, I can't give an exact date yet, but please just keep an eye on the Facebook, keep an eye on the part of the reason why is because the funding has been confirmed to the council, but we haven't necessarily. It's not in the grant funding agreements and the service agreements aren't all finalized yet for it to go out. So that's one of the reasons why it's we haven't necessarily put it out yet. Also, it was confirmed that we'd be receiving the funding that we can use in September while we were in the middle of the current excavation, which is great. It's a nice problem to have, essentially. But it'd be nice to have like a year to plan these things. But well, it'd be nice for Frank, I should say, to have a year to plan these things.
That's brilliant. Okay, Nick, we're about 15 minutes beyond the finish time. So what I'm going to do is I have one more question that I've got to ask for you. I think you'll know where it comes from. But everyone else, the questions I've not been able to ask, we'll send to Nick and we'll ask him to do a written response where he can to them. I think the best thing you can actually do is get onto the website and get onto the Facebook page that Nick's already highlighted. And we will circulate the links for all of those to you as well, because they're just a mine of information. But Nick, your last question for tonight, before I let you go, and I wrap up, is this one. Are you looking forward to the release of Gladiator 2?
I think I'm horrendous to watch any historical film with, apparently. So I guess feel like that's not quite right. But I feel like I've got a soft spot for Gladiator because I loved the first one. So yes, I am looking forward to, regardless of whether I'll be like, oh, is that actually Caracalla? Is that not? I think I'm looking forward to it. I think it'd be quite good. If Russell,
you're going to have to do a screening on the cricket ground. You know that, don't you?
Chloe had suggested doing a sort of like diggers go to the cinema event around it. We're planning to do a sort of series of talks in November. Again, this is all like early rough stages, so it may coincide with a screening of Gladiator 2.
Brilliant. Okay, right, Nick, you're not allowed to go just yet because I've got to do a little bit of wrapping up. But first of all, everyone, we're going to put a quick poll up in the chat. If you could just have a go at filling out the poll, it really helps us just understand how we did tonight and how you got on. I have to say, Nick, overcoming technical difficulties was brilliant. So well done, Nick. I really appreciate that. I know how scary that moment is. So that's great. Everyone's having a go at the poll there. That's fantastic. Also, we'll flag the main Festival of Archaeology survey. So we do longer surveys for you. We'll send those out to you, but also there is an online survey we'd like you to do primarily for This Is Archaeology, but also for the Festival of Archaeology. We're really keen to hear from you about what more you would like to see and what you'd like to hear about. Obviously, the CBA is a charity, so our This Is Archaeology lecture series is free. If you'd like to make a donation to the CBA, we'll put a link in the chat for that as well. I would also just like to flag at £23.25, CBA membership is half price during the whole of the Festival of Archaeology. So if you want to help us support projects like Nick's, then please do become a member of the CBA. And we are able to do quite a lot with your money to support activities like this and to promote them. But you can go onto the CBA website and find out all about that, whether it's just leaving a donation, signing up for our regular newsletter, or becoming a member. Please do look at that and let us know what you think. Finally, our next This Is Archaeology lecture. You don't have a whole month to wait. You've only got a week. It's going to be next week, and it is Roots in Time, Shaping Woodland for the Future with Nina O'Hare. Nina was one of the projects she ran, Small Pits, Big Ideas, was the winner of the Marsh Community Archaeology Award last year in 2023, so taking over from Uncovering Roman Carlisle. And then additional work that Nina worked on, Roots in Time, was the winner of the Archaeology and Sustainability Awards at the Archaeological Achievement Awards, and they also won the Outstanding Achievement Award last year. So again, we're bringing you award-winning archaeological projects here at the CBA on our This Is Archaeology lecture slot. So plenty of time for you to sign up to that. That'll be on Tuesday, the 23rd of July at 7 p.m. For now, whilst I'm going to see lots of Nick and talk to him lots, and I do really want to thank him for giving his time to this presentation, I would actually just like to thank all the volunteers, Frank and Chloe, and all of the people who actually have made Uncovering Roman Carlisle the most fantastic project that it is. I was really fortunate in 2021 to meet a whole host of the volunteers who gave up 2 hours on a Sunday to meet me whilst I was walking Hadrian's Wall and tell me why they love their project. And I have been captivated by it ever since. So really, this project's success is down to the volunteers and the people of Carlisle. So a big thank you for all of your enthusiasm and joining this call in numbers, which is great. I do recognise a few names on there, which is lovely. Nick, thank you so much. I'm really, really delighted you could join us to actually explore Uncovering Roman Carlisle. And I just want to play cricket at that cricket ground. So if you could actually sort that out for me, I'd be delighted.
But sure we can manage something. Speak to Mike. Yeah, no, thank you to everyone in the chat, and thank you to the CBA for having us and giving us a platform to keep kind of shouting about what we're doing, which has been great.
There are some lovely comments in the chat, Nick, and we will make sure we get those copied over to you and the team so you can all see those, which is fantastic. So yes, everybody, thank you very much indeed, and we'll look forward to seeing you next week on Tuesday, the 23rd of July for Roots in Time. Thanks, everybody.